Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Duana Stanley. I'm an Australian. I've been working as a software engineer for over 10 years, the last 7 years being in Berlin at SoundCloud and Clue. And I wrote this talk because I think making technical decisions is so key to our jobs as software engineers. If you were to think of your career as a series of technical decisions that you either made or were part of, what would that look like? I'm sure that, with experience we can get better, but I think we can get better faster if we explicitly learn how to improve our decision-making skills. And when I put this slide set together, I wanted something calming, because for me, decision-making is scary. I really hate making decisions. Does anyone like making decisions? All right, I'm coming to you afterwards, and I'm getting all of your tips. But yeah, I wanted something calming, and I looked for this, and then I thought, oh, it looks like a bit like The Art of War, And then I thought, what would Sun Tzu say if he was doing this talk? And he might say, mystify, mislead, and surprise the colleagues. Sun Tzu, The Art of Technical Decision-Making. That's not so my style. I'm more like this. It's easy to like your friend, but sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is to like someone who disagrees with you. Sun Tzu, The Art of Technical Decision-Making. But I'm not Sun Tzu. This is Duana Stanley, and it's The Art of Technical Decision-Making by me. And for me, I think the art of technical decision-making is 80% the art of decision-making. And for me, the art of decision-making is to make the decision obvious. And we do a lot of work to get it to that point, but it's a really good feeling when the decision has crystallized from your hard work. As I said, I wanted something calming because I have a lot of fears around this subject matter. And I was looking for something that represents fear with these pebbles a bit more. And I chose this weird technical pebble construction above an active kind of raging river. I thought that signified fear a little bit. And then I got carried away and just looked for pebbles everywhere. This is a river in Bali where the people do this. It's wonderful. But back to my talk. The outline, I'm going to delve into the fears, because I think it's important to address those. I'm going to talk about some decision-making concepts. And then I'm going to talk about a process that I've used with a team to make some pretty big technical decisions. So I think the reason that I fear decision-making is ultimately I fear being wrong, making the wrong decision. I fear uncertainty. You never know, is this going to turn out to be the right decision? I have fear of complexity. Sometimes you have 100 options that all look similar, or you have 2 incomparable options. There's a great technique to work with fear, and that's changing your mindset. So I'm mastering the fear of being wrong by changing my mindset. Instead of trying to make the right decision, that's so final, it's so pass or fail, aim to make a good decision. And a good decision is one where you've done the homework, you followed a process, and you think, you're proud of yourself, you put the effort in. It still might not turn out to be right because of chance. But the good thing about aiming for good is we can also get better and learn how to be good. And the other thing I do now is I befriend the worst case scenario. So I'm spinning up a new microservice for my company, and I get to choose the language. What if I choose the wrong language? What's the worst case that could happen? The worst case is that some developers are just going to be swearing at me for years because they don't like whatever language I've chosen. It's not so bad. To master the fear of uncertainty, information here is key, but you want just enough because there's a time component to what you're doing. You can predict consequences and likelihood. So this was also key for me. It made decision-making fun because instead of it being a horrible thing, if it's like a bet, I'm going to put all of my money on Rails as the future, for web application infrastructure, it's fun. People like making bets, right? And you get to see if you win. And then to master the fear of complexity, we have these tools in our tool belt. All engineers have this number 1 tool, simplify. So if you have 100 options, look for the common elements. Tool number 2, the favorite tool of product managers, prioritize. So choose the factors that are most important. And then tool number 3, I think, is the favorite tool of computer scientists. Identify the biggest trade-off. You know, when you have a polynomial in maths, you look for the leading term because that is the one that's going to make the big difference. And finally, sorry, we're not done with the fears yet, because although for me, making decisions is a fearful thing, doing it in teams is another dimension of fear. Because I have a fear of conflict. I have a fear of arguing. And the reason I have a fear of arguing is that I have a fear of losing. I really don't like to lose an argument. And someone was like, oh, why don't you do like debating? Like I didn't do debate club at high school. Maybe that's why I lost out on those arguing skills. And I thought like debating like Toastmasters, getting up in front of a crowd publicly and losing, it sounds terrible. Like, no, that's not for me. Luckily, Sun Tzu has something to say about this. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. That's what I'm going for. And yes, to master my fear of losing, I think, look, let's win as a team, win as a company. It's okay, like I don't have to win every time. I want to aim to learn. So if I wasn't able to convince someone of my idea, why? Really think about it. For me, I thought about it, and in the past, like I tend to come up with non-standard solutions to things. I'm very creative. But engineers don't like creative solutions. Not always. You know, they want it to be standard. You're going away from the norm. And I think that, okay, that's something that I have to learn how to sell this better. Yeah, maybe you need to learn your selling and marketing techniques a bit. But if you can understand the resistance, maybe it's also political. You know, maybe you need to learn how to deal in political systems. You can get better at your next challenge. Whew, we're done with fears. I can walk over to this side of the room just to take a break. All right, so now we're going to talk about some concepts. I talked about a good decision instead of the right decision. What is a good decision? Let's think about it from our personal lives. A good decision is goal-oriented. Say, I want to invest all my money and get rich. I want to be rich, right? I'm going to put all of my money in Bitcoin. That's my decision. Should I do that? Or Ethereum or whatever. It has to be reliable information. So, you know, I heard that like Bitcoin's like too expensive these days. My friend said that. Is that true? Research a bit. It has to take your personal context into account. So it's a huge difference if I'm going to retire in a couple of years of whether I should put all of my money into crypto, or if I'm at the beginning of my career and I only have like $100 saving. It's a huge difference. It compares multiple alternatives. So when I'm thinking crypto, you know, like I shouldn't just be thinking all the coins in crypto. I should be thinking standard stock markets. Maybe craft beer will become a thing to invest in. And it has to feel right. We know that there's all these sayings about your gut, and actually the brain and the gut are connected. And I think that for me, signaling, if I don't feel ready, I've done the rationalizing and I still don't feel ready, I think it's a sign from my body that I need more time or a bit more homework. And it still might not lead to success because chance. So a good technical decision, I think, for me, is very similar. It's goal-oriented, so you want to solve a problem for your team, for your business, or an opportunity is there. Has to be reliable information, we all know that one. It takes the business context, the requirements, and time into account. So if you're doing a huge project to beat the competitors, time might be of the essence. We make the trade-offs explicit and the risks. That's the engineering part of software engineering. It has team buy-in. This one, I think, is super important because if the team isn't convinced but they're made to do it, they're not going to be as productive. And it was a reasonable bet for the time. So as an example of like how much time should you spend to a technical decision, it really depends like the impact of it. Here's a tweet. The people from the Flutter dev team posted why they chose Dart as the language, and I asked them, hey, you know, like great article, how long did it take to survey and decide on that language. And I said, it probably took a couple of months to survey and decide. I think the longest part was us admitting to ourselves that we needed a new language. So you're creating a framework for all developers in the world to use. You can't revert that easily, so they took their time. I think a winning technical decision survives change. So yeah, look back into your past and see which of your decisions still turned out to be good decisions at that time and were able to survive. Let's talk quickly about team decision making. So here I have graphed what your team's decision-making process is like. How participatory is it? And how fast is it? How fast can you make decisions? So here on the bottom right, I've got authoritative leader. And that is a valid model if you have like a lot of juniors and a senior, or you have an emergency situation. You make decisions fast, and the whole team wasn't involved, but they understand. Then I've got like a consultative leader. This is kind of like you've got a tech lead, but they really listen and involve the team members for their expertise and crystallize out a decision from that. And then another green point at the top is your high-performing collective. So you might not have a dedicated tech lead. You might all be peers, similar experience levels, but you know how to work together. You know each other, you know your preferences, you trust each other, you trust what each other have to say, and you can make decisions really quickly. Then you have the struggling leader, where you have maybe a tech lead who doesn't know yet how to involve the team or is new to leadership. They're a bit slower, they try. Then you have the struggling collective, where there's no formal leader, but nobody knows how to make decisions with each other and who to go with. Then at the bottom, I've got shoutocracy. Someone mentioned to me this term. So this is like people just shouting over each other, and whoever's loudest gets their way. And then right at the bottom, like if you're neither participatory or fast in your team decisions, then God help you. Like you need to like get some, I don't know, agile help or... Okay. Argumentational styles for people now. Like this is pseudoscience, and a friend of mine who's an engineering manager pointed this out to me. It's interesting to know the argumentational styles of your team members or whoever you're debating with. So there are the competitive, purposeful, strong-willed people. They're the red people, not me. I'm more the social, creative, enthusiastic person. I can win people with my enthusiasm. There are the analytical, data-driven, and questioning people, the blues, and the encouraging, sharing, and patient people, the greens. Now, you will be a vector from these 4 points, these 4 dimensions somewhere, right? But you can recognize, so for me, I realized that I was up against a lot of reds sometimes in my career, and they could just outperform me, and I would just give up because they could just keep talking, and I just couldn't. But now I know if I'm going up against a red and I'm not good at arguing, I can prepare. I'll do my homework, I'll have stuff ready to go, and I'll have techniques of how to deal with them. One technique is if you have someone really stubborn and really, really good at arguing, you say, what would it take to change your mind? Or you can use the 5 whys. So why is that important? And why is that important? And why do you think that? And why should we do that? And you just keep asking and just try to get down to the deep level of behind it. But I prefer, like if we have these high-performing teams, we have consensus, because consensus is really the key to long-term binding team decisions. There's no consensus on what is consensus. So I've taken a random definition from the internet. Consensus means finding an option that all team members will support. It does not mean that all the team members would select that option as their first choice. And I think consensus is finding a way to move forward with a shared understanding. Consensus is not coercion. So you can even coerce people with enthusiasm. I did this on a team. It was a team of 2, and I said to my team, I really wanted to try out a new dependency injection pattern. I also gave a talk about it. And I said to my teammate, come on, it's going to be great, it's functional, you'll love it. And they were like, And so I created this non-standard way of doing dependency injection. Teams of 2 are just as dangerous as teams of 1, because the coercion is much easier. It wasn't maybe the best thing for the company. I got to try it out and give a talk. My colleagues were like, okay, can we revert it now? That's not true. It's still kind of there. They're like, it's okay. We don't know. Pure majority rule. This is not consensus because it's important that the minority, if they don't agree, that they agree to move forward. If they think they've been heard. It's not compromise because if you are arguing, for example, of whether we should use object composition or inheritance in the code base, you can't compromise on that. You can try, but it might be even more strange. And it's not giving up. I've given up a lot of times in the past because I wasn't good at arguing, but I and people like me, we have something, a perspective to share. The company is richer from your perspective, and we need to get it out there and not give up so easily. So, strive for consensus, but have a fallback. And I'll go into what fallbacks are later. Interestingly, there's high-performing collectives, open source examples, Wikipedia and Prometheus. They really go into detail of how they find consensus as a team, and they have some great definitions online. Okay, definitions done. Whew. I'll go to the other side. This is great. Okay, so I am now going to show you a process I use to do a team decision, a big decision. We had to decide, should we adopt a new technology for the next big company project? And I looked up the etymology of calculus. It's a set of steps of reasoning, and the original root is the Roman word for pebbles. So that's why I had so many pebbles. Nerd. Okay. This is the process we used. We did 3 1.5 hour workshops together as a team. This is just something for you to try out. You don't have to do it for all decisions, obviously. I'm going to run through it. We first decided to understand the decision as a team. I made the team check our emotions. We'd list our options, evaluate options, say, are we ready to decide? Build consensus, sleep on it. The sleeping is the best part. And then document. So we did this in agile-style workshops. There were 5 team members I was facilitating. This is the Clue Android team. We had sticky notes and a whiteboard. And yeah, let's go through this. The point is to make the decision obvious as a collective brain. Get it all out there in front of you on whiteboards and see what it looks like. So the example I'm going to use today is, should we use Ruby on Rails? So what do we mean, should we use Ruby on Rails? So actually, I used to be a Java developer as well. And I was in this big organization, Java shop. We were using, I don't know, some version of struts and juice, and it was pretty cool. But then someone, a really enthusiastic developer came in and said, let's use Ruby on Rails for our next project. Ruby on Rails, it's so much faster, less clunk, yada, yada, yada. And understand the decision first. Where is this coming from? So first of all, what is the goal or problem? Why should we use Ruby on Rails? You would say, hey, because we'll be faster at development. And what's the scope? Should we do it for this project? Should we do it for the whole organization? Can we do it in just parts of the organization? And how much time should we spend deciding? So again, it really depends. If your next project has a tight deadline, you need to decide quick. If it's a more academic thing you have time with, you can have more time. What is the cost of delay? What is the cost of reversing it? What are the risks and opportunities? So the opportunities are, faster development, but the risks are, hey, we're going to have a fragmented tech stack, or hey, we're going to have Rails was pretty new back then. We're going to have to figure out where Rails doesn't work for us on a big project. What is our context and appetite for risk? And this question, lastly, I wouldn't say it maybe in front of the team, but think about it yourself. What is the conflict? So I think the reason that decisions are hard is because there's an underlying conflict that we're uneasy about. So for example, say I was that Ruby on Rails person saying, hey, let's do it. I do Ruby in my spare time. I love it. I love the community. I create gems. I see how fast it is. I love it. But the rest of the developers on my team are like Andre this morning, the 80% happy Java developers. So they think, hey, we've invested in this thing, it's pretty good. What's, I don't want to have to learn something else. I don't want to risk, that's a conflict, right? And you got to know how to navigate that. You got to build techniques. I made my team check in with our emotions because as, we think we're rational, but we're not. We're not fully rational. Emotion fuels us. If you look at these football fans in the stadiums, when their team lose, they go out on the streets and they burn cars. That's not rational. We love, we hate, we love Ruby. We love all the languages. I'm not allowed to say what language I don't like. All right, so check our emotions as a team. You can do this objectively. You can say, what are our fears and concerns? And honestly, put them in some post-it notes, put them up there. But what are we excited about as well? What are the best and worst case scenarios? And when you write the worst case scenarios up, you can reflect off your other team members to say, do they really think that's possible as well? And what info would enrich our intuitions then? And lastly, again, you don't have to ask this in a team, ask yourself, is something or someone else influencing me? So it's a bit like out of your personal life as well. You go to buy a really nice top and the salesperson is really friendly and nice and they say, yeah, it looks great and you look great in this and you kind of want to please them. Similar in tech, can happen in tech as well. I had a senior technical director come to me once. I was working again on a Java API with the team and he said, oh, Duana, I think we've really missed our chance on this project to try out Scala. Scala's where it's at. Everyone's getting on board. It's great. It's functional. It'll make us more productive. And we ended up rewriting what we had in Scala. And we had already rewritten it once from JavaScript to Java and then now to Scala. And I can't help but think, how much was I influenced by this senior technical director wanting this? It worked out really well with Scala, by the way. Okay, listing the options. So going back to our example of should we use Ruby on Rails for our next big project, you write this on the board, it's scoped, we're saying the next project. The goal is develop faster, right? But also scope your goal for this project or for the organization. So we decided as a team we want to develop faster as an organization. What are the options? Yes or no, right? It's a question. Brainstorm more options. This is a wonderful artwork from Clue. It's a female health app. You can track your period and your other reproduction symptoms, and they let me keep this artwork in there. I love it. So what are the more options? Actually, there's a third one that we identified together. So there's yes, no, not for this big project, but for a smaller project, and then no, never. It just gives it a bit of perspective. Now we evaluate the options. So when we evaluate, in decision theory, there are all sorts of wonderful strategies. There's minimax, minimize the maximum damage. There's maximax, maximize the maximum win. But, a simple pros and cons, will get you very far. Often we don't even get it working with the basic tools. So I still suggest simple pros and cons, but instead of calling it pros and cons, I call it benefits and opportunities. Because I'm a very risk-averse person, I need to be reminded of what are the opportunities. And then costs and risks. And again, for the opportunistic people, to get them thinking about the costs of their ideas and risks. We then, as a team, did the sticky note agile thing where you think of everything, every pro and every con, and we group them together. And this is just an example. So the green stuff are the benefits and opportunities, like faster development, you stay up to date with the industry, less risky evaluation. For the no never, single tech stack is your pro. And then the costs and risks are in orange. So for the yes, it's a risky evaluation, it requires learning, fragmented tech stack. And for the don't go with Ruby on Rails, the risk is falling behind, it's harder to change, and we're stuck with painful development maybe. You can then put question marks as team members, I don't know what this one means, what do you mean painful development? Actually, it's pretty good. You can really have this conversation with each other and figure out already where you lie and how you see things. And then your task is to identify the biggest trade-off in each section. So what are the most important factors? So I said for each team member, you've got 3 votes for each thing, and put them on what you think is the most important factor in both pro and con. And so when we did this, we might have something like, for choosing yes, go with Ruby on Rails, the biggest win is faster development. The biggest risk is that it will delay this project. For the no, but let's do Ruby for a smaller project, the big win is it doesn't delay the project. The big cost maybe later is there's more to rewrite for the big project. And then for the no, never case, the biggest win is single tech stack and all the goodies that brings a company. And the biggest risk is painful development going forward. So at this point, you can kind of see where you lie as a team. It's really good to get this in front of yourself. To agree on the trade-off is already a huge win. You say, are we ready to decide or do we need more time? Maybe there was one point in there that was quite controversial that needs more thinking or some research. You can allocate a couple team members to go compile a case study. But if you're ready, jump into the hard part, build consensus. So at the steps 1 to 5 was one workshop we did, and at the end of it, I said, hey, put your star on which option you personally think you want to go with right now. And then as a team, we could see the spread already. And that was really interesting. And then I scheduled the second workshop afterwards, a couple of days afterwards, to also let things sink in. With consensus, because it's hard, have some fallback methods agreed upon upfront with the team. So here are a couple. One is that if you're tied as a team, you can't decide, get the lead or manager to make the final call. You can opt for more research. So maybe you want to do a spike to see, hey, how does this Ruby thing actually play out with this payment gateway thing? Do a spike on it. You can agree to vote. So here, as a team, you're split, but the minority is happy to go ahead with a majority vote because they know they've been heard, and we have to move forward as a team. They're helping the team move forward. You can also survey experts, so figure out what your friends in other companies are doing, get on Twitter. Or you can agree on first steps or a sub-problem. So it's really hard, not being able to agree. If you're able to agree on a smaller thing that gets you started, that's awesome. A friend of mine gave me this tip. She's an engineering manager, and she said that she's working with a team where the business requirements, everything, it's so uncertain. The team has no idea what they'll be doing from day to day. The fact that they can agree on something small that will take them the next couple of weeks gives them this piece of being on an island of certainty in a sea of uncertainty. That was her words. I had to get that in there. Okay, but once you've got a fallback method, agree on what you think are the main trade-offs as a team. You map out your positions, as I say, and for us it was really interesting. We had 3 people who were on the no, let's not use a new technology for this project, but for a smaller project. We had 1 outlier who was really enthusiastic about using the new technology for the big project, and 1 outlier who was really against or really didn't want to use a new technology ever in the code base. And they all had good reasons. So you do a consensus check and you say, this is where the team lies. How do you feel about going with the option with the most people on it right now? And encourage your team members to say, hey, I'm not ready. I think there's still some points here that I want to elaborate, that I want to get into your heads. You can brainstorm, are there options for mutual benefit? So for example, we decided as a team we weren't ready to use the new technology, but we decided that we could do a workshop internally to learn about it together and use the technology for prototyping. So that was a new thing that came out of this process. Yeah, and if you can't agree, just agree how to move forward. The business in mind. The business needs you to move forward. Sleep on it. This really works for myself, right? I'm so passionate about my ideas. I think they're brilliant. I think this has to be this way. This is the chance now. And then the weekend comes, I come back on Monday, I've heard the other things, and you know what, nah, your way is fine, let's do that. This is too weird. So yeah, give yourself some time, document it, not only for the new team members that are coming on board and want to understand, but also for yourself, so that later on, sometime in the future, you can evaluate it, figure out, how did this decision pan out? Was it a good decision? Or what could I do different next time? All right, we're at the end. I have a few resources. So I'm super interested in decision making in general. I read this quite good book called The Right Decision. I also read an amazing book called Collaboration Explained, which is generally how to work together in teams without killing each other. There's a wonderful book called A Young Lady's Guide to A Young Lady's Guide to Technical Decision Making by Charity Majors online. This is about adopting new technology like guidelines, really good, from the point of view of an ops person. And then architectural decision records, I was speaking with someone I just met, and they were using this as well for their team, Michael Nygard. This is a format for documenting decisions. It says context, forces, alternatives. And we actually, at SoundCloud, had something similar. We used an RFC process. And this was more an offline decision-making process. So, you don't have to do this workshop thing. Maybe you need to do it to get together to make the final decision. But having these RFCs, or architectural decisions, as records are fantastic for company history. Junkia? I hope that's okay. I heard. Thanks. Great, and I just want to end on this slide. I think the art of technical decision making is making the decision obvious as a collective brain. Cool. I'm really sorry, because we're a bit late, I don't want to take questions. Also, I'll be around at the after party tonight, also around tomorrow. I'm really happy. You can reach me on Twitter @startcoffee or startcoffee@gmail.com. I'm really excited to talk and hear what works for you. Thank you.
Thank you.